As in Ralph?
As in more days. It's like
Really excited.
parents
Just kind of goofy or?
oh yeah, well it's DC.
I don't know what happened to the internet.
I didn't think about that. I just really think of the internet. But everything on Google Slides.
Oh, it's fine. Oh, just if you open the slides while you have internet, because it keeps it all. It's like kind of like an offline source type app.
Oh yeah, it did. Okay.
Hello. Test.
That's why I always do Google Slides when I was like, at first I'm like panic and I'm like, no internet. It's like, wait a second. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, Google Slides work out better.
So,
Yeah, so we'll look at that. Although actually, like,
Test. Ola, can you hear me? How do I sound, Ola? I'm asking Ola how I sound because he was just texting me. He's probably a little bit behind me.
How's it going?
we're good. I think we're gonna be able to do the video thing.
Yeah.
We're broadcasting right now.
Cool.
So people get to see my pretty face. Ola says it looks good.
Looks good, bud. You forgot the bud.
Yeah.
Cool.
Ola's missing all the good pizza. He said sounds pretty good. Does it need to go up, or is the volume great, or? So Purdy. The power of Linux.
All right. I'm gonna set up the announcements.
Okay, I think I set all the power settings right, so hopefully it doesn't go off in the middle of recording.
Oh, good. Where's the?
Oh, you had to turn the sleep mode off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's the? Oh, it's this thing, right?
I don't think I ever
What do
actually
you
had to
need?
go to sleep. I think
Oh,
the
yeah.
screen just turns off, but I left the
So,
screen
yeah.
on just in case. Okay, I think we're good to go because he's watching.
Okay, cool.
And we have messages up here.
Are all your speakers here and did they all get a test? I got that test, but I didn't.
I'm gonna get.
We got
I
live
don't know where
feedback.
Eric is. I've never met him before, so I don't know.
Eric Speaker, report to the office. Eric Speaker.
That's one. I'll ask one if he wants it.
Okay.
Okay. How's the camera gonna run?
I think it's gonna work.
Okay. I have like a stand for my phone. So if you wanted me to like film it too, yeah, it's just like a little tripod actually. So if you want,
Yeah, I mean, what we got right now, we got like a little.
I got it set up. You can see.
And HD webcam on. Okay. So it will have like a. It'll be on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
We're live.
Yeah.
No editing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be live.
First, we're gonna Twitch stream it, and then afterwards it'll go on YouTube.
The only person watching it live though is Ola.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you might get little dings up there
It's
for
kind of a big deal though. So
He is. So it took 3 people to set this up. 3 or 4 people to set this up. What a month.
okay. So what do I plug into?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, right here.
I think it looks pretty good. I haven't heard it yet. Ola said it sounded good.
Oh, very good.
The volume's up front, the gain's up front, so I have it on the laptop 100% right before it starts to go over because you don't want to pick up any static. Hopefully we're not picking up too much from behind. Should have probably closed it out of Slack.
It's a way of creating dominoes in a way that
Cool. I think I'm gonna be fine.
We've already had that. Say, oh, this is what I have.
Close my computer. Okay, so we'll just leave. Cool.
All right. Do you mind if I move your computer?
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, no, plug it.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Use box right underneath if you want.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm gonna do the getting hands greasy part of this.
Oh, excellent.
I sure hope my car's done before Saturday. Ola's asking, can we turn it so he can see the slides too?
Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
I don't know. We might be too far away though.
Well,
I guess if they stood right there.
yeah, as long as you stand like this is actually pretty good. As long as you're okay standing right here.
Kind of get the slides in.
Yeah. That's.
I mean, the slides get posted though too. Of course, if you're watching it live, it's
Yeah, I think this is
kind of hard to see though. Like what you're typing, you can't see what you're typing.
Yeah, is there a way to actually turn your screen on? Or do we know when it's screwed with that?
I don't know. I've never done it.
Okay.
Probably hit a button.
Let's not screw with that.
I don't know if it does anything. He said it's better though. I figured leaving the screen on there might be better though for people watching what they're doing. So I hit it function and one of these keys.
I think it's probably fine.
It's probably fine, are you sure?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a little distracting when you're talking, but I think it's fine.
Okay. I was thinking we could leave it up just so people could see where they're at.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And kind of say, oh, well, maybe I need to come back in a little bit. What do you think, Ola? Get a message in like 10 minutes.
How did you find out about But I guess you also DC, so maybe. Did you drive it?
He said we were too much fun.
Okay, so you're like,
But it's always got fun.
So we are here for your interview.
Yeah,
I kind of do the drive again for notes. Just probably not send notes. It's a great way to actually. Drive again. It's never been to Baltimore. Twice a year. Okay. I want that posture. So I think about it.
All I need is some. You can still hear me, right, Ola?
How we looking?
Awesome. Ola says it's great.
Solid mic.
We got the webcam, it's pointing at the screen.
All I can think, only problem is, are we sure that this is the cardioid
I have
point?
no idea.
Right, because
I'm not used to this one.
so this is the cardioid pattern, which means it, like, I think it picks up everything but here.
Okay, so then we need to turn it this way.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, well the front thing does tell you. The big icon on the front tells you that's the front. Is that better, Ola? So we're thinking people are going to stand right here. So that's probably really good.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. Yep.
huge space heaters.
So every single one was kind of carry around the mile, 15 feet after that.
Something like caffeine or something.
Well, we don't have a lot of, we don't have any slack on the keyboard. We need extension cables. So everything's set up. So the mic is only go like 2 feet away from the laptop. The webcam can only go 2 feet. So we don't really have any wiggle room. Yeah, if we did, we need to get everything outside. Probably regular educator. It should be, it's a start. It's good enough. Yeah. All right. Okay, we're starting now. All right.
All right. Hey everybody, my computer just went on standby, so that means it's time for the CharmCityJS meetup. One moment. All right, welcome to CharmCityJS. Sorry for the little false start. I managed to time standing up exactly when my computer went on standby. It's our December meetup, so to celebrate that, we have the snowman emoji. Thank you, Unicode. We have a website. If you want to go on it, it'll put you into a Slack room, which then you can talk to people there. And you should submit a talk, which is also linked from our website. 5, 10, and 15 to 20 minute talks are great. Advanced topics are great. Beginner topics are golden. The talks don't have to be JavaScript, and they certainly don't have to be pure JavaScript. You can use English. And so now let's thank our sponsors. We've got advertising.com, SparkPost, and tenon.io. There's a couple of announcements tonight. First is that the Baltimore on Rail, or Be More on Rails, sorry, meetup is next week on Tuesday at 7. There's a talk about using Jekyll, and then a talk that no one has submitted yet, so that could be you. Oops. And then there's also, a few weeks from now, there's an open source hack night that Be More on Rails is putting on. And it's apparently language agnostic, so you could even go there and write Node and not Ruby or JavaScript. And then looking in the far future, there's a workshop for women that Be More on Rails is putting on. So you can go there if you're a woman and want to learn about Ruby on Rails, or if you're a Rails expert, you can go there and coach somebody if you already know. More important is this weekend is Baltimore Node School. It's December 5th, 1 to 5. You can come learn Node or teach Node to people if you already know Node. There's only 9 spots left if you want to learn, or if you want to learn by teaching, there are 12 spots left. So, and that was like hours ago, so they might be none. So you should check. I don't know if you need to know the link to sign up, just let me know later.
Isn't it free?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think very carefully how to answer the question the way you posed it, but it is free. And also, if you want to be a little bit of a masochist and get there a tiny bit early to help people get inside the building, please talk to me or Jason after the meetup. No, there's like a door. There's doors that lock automatically. That kind of more modern obstacle. What's that? Oh, okay, we got a good idea. It's good. Also, there's this front-end masters thing. Jason, do you have those or not? Okay, never mind. Hear this. So now I'm going to switch to Jason because I don't know as much about this as he does.
Hi. Who's been to a Node School? Anyone go? So cool. Yeah, this one's going to be a beta, or it's a beta more. It's actually beta more. It's fine. But it's been at the Digital Hardware Foundation for a long time, which is a great space. We're just trying something else out, going to beta more. But Digital Harbor Foundation. Let's see here. Can I bring this? Is this okay? We do a new tab here. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. We have internet. Maybe. So Digital Harbor does a bunch of cool stuff. For a lot of times with kids, they got like after school programs where they have 3D printers. And they'll help bring kids in from city schools. It's down in Federal Hill, really close to Baltimore, actually. It's a great, great space. And so I was thinking, I think like this morning, actually, so it's kind of a late matriculating idea, but it's the holiday season, right? And so as CharmCityJS, I thought it would be cool if we could try to do something nice. So they're trying to raise money for field trips. Every $500 they raise pays for a complete field trip for a school. The school doesn't have to pay anything. And the schools really, really love it. They've been doing it all year and getting lots of great feedback about it. So what I did earlier today in this scroll, which I can't control, so you're not going to see my name probably, but you can just click donate here if you want. It'd be awesome if you did this. And you can put in any amount here. I did $50 earlier today, one time, and then just put hashtag CCJS in this note. You don't have to put your name, but please leave the amount, because for every dollar we raise, AOL has agreed to match up to $500, and SparkPost has agreed to also match up to $500. So we've got 2 matching gifts for every dollar we raise, up to $500. So if you could do this, I'm going to tweet about it a lot. We're going to do it for 24 hours. So in the next 24 hours, we'll put the link in a tweet, and I'll send an email out to the meetup group. After this, just wanted to announce it here. You can go ahead and go to that website and donate at your leisure, as long as you do it in the next 24 hours, and put the CCJS tag in there, and we'll count them up at the end and send that information to AOL and SparkPost, and they'll match.
Is it up to $500 per donation or across?
Total. They'll match 500, up to $500 total. Yeah. Just making that clear. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. That's cool, and I hope to see you guys at Node School this weekend if you want to come out. If you have any questions about that at all, just talk to me or Mike. If you have questions about like the volunteering thing, really just need someone to like watch the doors. The doors are locked downstairs, so it would be cool if someone could help with that. I don't know where your slide presentation is. It here? Yeah, that looks it. Boom. Speakers. Oh yeah, we have speakers tonight. I know, I'm not gonna steal the show.
There might have been another announcement. Let me still check. Okay, announcements from the crowd. Anybody got another announcement? We got a lot so far? All right.
I work at Millennium Media, now we're with AOL, and I just wanted to announce that we have a position that we would like to fill for a front-end dev with decent amount of experience, let's say a year or so. The job is mostly JavaScript, basically front-end. Some artistical tendencies would be a plus, but not needed. If anybody is interested, talk to me later. Thanks.
Great. Anybody else? Wait.
Yeah, well, in that vein, I work at Under Armour. We're hiring some senior devs. It is for a Node position, but you don't need to know Node ahead of time. As long as you have web development experience, we're open to it. So anyway, come see me afterwards if you're interested.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I'll do one. I'm not going to say it because I'm in the middle. Spit around. I'm the lead engineer for the brand new labs group for TIA Graph. They're based in Charlotte. I work from home, and I'm looking to build our team. Primarily looking for much more seriously on the senior end, full stack. I don't care what technologies anybody uses, but if you can do a bunch of different things and like always mixing up your day to day, hit me up and I'll give you my info so I can get your info.
All right.
Remote work pays really well.
Sweet. Anybody else got one? All right, cool. So on to the speakers for tonight. So we're going to start off with Juan. I actually saw this talk already, so I can tell you firsthand that it's very good. And Eric, I actually haven't checked in with Eric. Eric, are you here? Oh, great. Oh, yeah. Oh, Eric. Okay. All right. All right. I've met you. All right. Great. So Eric's going to tell us about a game project he worked on a little while ago. And then Brian's got a cool talk about Meteor.js and dashboards, and apparently used React as well, which is a prerequisite for any of our meetups. There has to be at least one React talk. All right, so I'll pass it off to Juan. All right.
Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. A second false start. One final note is that after the meetup, I literally have forgotten this every time I've done this. After the meetup, we'll go grab a drink. It's a 3-minute walk to the north. It's on Hudson Street. So hopefully I will see you all there.
Where?
It's at Huck's. It's this kind of new bar. It's like the only. It's called Huck's. It's called Huck's American Craft. If you're
Google may not tell you where it is.
yeah, it's very weirdly not Google searchable. I don't know, but it's only like a block away. Just follow people. All right.
Turn right, walk a block, turn right, walk a block.
Yes. Yeah. All right. We got a couple of techniques. I think they all will work. All right.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mike. I hope that this is as good the second time around. Well, thanks a lot for having me, everyone. Let's go ahead and jump in right here with my computer loading, essential first step. Great. Well, yeah. So again, thank you very much for having me. Today, we're going to talk about the challenges of writing web applications that require big amounts of data to be loaded into them. And particularly, we're going to talk about the trade-off that we often have to make between UX and performance. Then we're going to talk about how adopting a streaming approach to data transfer gives us huge benefits in web applications, and how a library named Obo.js lets us do that in a very simple, fully JavaScript fashion. So first, to get it out of the way, who am I? My name is Juan. I work at Fluencia in Roslyn, where I work on SpanishDict.com, which is the biggest online Spanish-English dictionary. And what I'd like to talk about is that big JSON is hard. So applications that have to pull a big amount of data in them to be useful are difficult, because getting a lot of data from the server to the client is a big jump to do. It's not usually a good idea to make a user wait for this big amount of data to be compiled on the server before you send a response back to the client, because the thing is, users aren't really patient. Amazon did this study where they added 100 milliseconds of load time into their page. And adding 100 milliseconds, to put that into perspective, is about a fourth of the time that it takes you to blink your eyes. So that's a tiny amount of time. And that amount of time added up to a 1% loss in revenue for Amazon. So I mean, for a company the scale of Amazon, that's millions and millions of dollars because of something that's very, very small. So this is in part why Ajax became such a big thing, because it allows us to, instead of waiting for this big response to be ready before we respond, it allows us to give a minimal page back to the user as quickly as possible, and then asynchronously go out, fetch the data that user is going to need, and then put that into the application. And that's great. That does lead to the perception of increased performance for the user. The thing about doing this asynchronous request in one big chunk is that just moving that operation from the server to the client isn't really any faster. In fact, I would argue that most of the time it's a lot slower, because now you're not making that request on your big, powerful server. Now you're making it on a much weaker device, probably on a spottier network, and you increase the chance of that connection failing. So what you could do in this situation is to take that big response and break it up. You can make many small Ajax requests. And then as each one of those requests finishes, you can take the data from that request and render it back to the user. Now this is good because it's something known as incremental loading, which does allow you to pull more data in and give users a better experience. The thing is that the most expensive thing when it comes to networking is something known as latency, which is the round trip time that it takes you to go from the client to the server and then back to the client again. So now that we're making many requests, what we're doing is we're taking that latency and we're multiplying it times the number of requests that we have to make. That gets very expensive really quickly. The other thing is that now the logic that we need to handle this data is also going to be more complex. Instead of having a single REST endpoint that we hit one time, now we're going to have to hit it multiple times, and we're going to have logic that's going to keep track of which data we've already requested, which data we want to request, and then can aggregate it all once we've gotten it. This is where a library named obo.js comes in and lets us almost completely sidestep these complications. Obo is a really simple library that gives you one thing. It gives you the obo function. And the obo function takes a URL and it makes a native XML HTTP request to that URL. Then it gets a response and it starts parsing that response. And here's where the magic comes in. Instead of waiting for that response to be all the way in the client before you can do anything with it, what Obo lets you do is it lets you interact with it while that data is still coming into your application. So it's basically a SAX-based parser for JSON and for the web. If you're not familiar with SAX, what SAX is it's a protocol for parsing XML where you can attach event listeners to different nodes in an XML tree. And then as that node gets parsed, you can interact with that data. So with Obo, this is as simple as calling one other function, which is the node function. The node function takes a pattern, which is going to tell it what node in the tree we're going to match. And then it takes a function, which is going to get fired as that node gets found. So let's talk about what you can select out of the tree. This pattern syntax is extremely simple and is really, really powerful. The simplest way to do it is that you're just specifying a property in a JSON object that you would like to get at. So say that we know that our JSON response is going to have some metadata. We can go ahead and just specify that property. And now when our listener fires, it's going to fire with an argument, which is that metadata. So then inside of that listener, we can do whatever we need to do with the metadata. We can also go ahead and just drill even deeper. So say we know that metadata is going to have a date. We can go ahead and just add a dot and specify that next property. Now our listener is going to fire. Once it parses the metadata and finds a date, it'll go ahead and fire for us with that date. And we'll just have it and get to interact with it right away. Now, say the data that we're loading is bigger. Say we have an array of data coming in this JSON. So we know that we're going to have this pixels array. Instead of having to wait for all of those pixels to be loaded and then getting to interact with them, instead we can tell the pattern syntax, hey, you should expect an array right here. And now this function is going to fire for every single pixel inside of that pixels array. And we can actually go ahead and mix these two approaches if we want to get even more specific. If we know that every pixel is going to have a color, we can just go ahead and tell it, hey, you're going to get all these pixels every single time, look for a property named color, and we're just going to fire with that color. By far, though, my favorite way to do it is to do some duck typing, which means that you can just specify the properties that you're going to look for. So say we know that we're going to look for objects that have an X property, a Y property, and a color property. And that's going to be a pixel to us. That means that as Obo is parsing this response, every time that it finds a node in the tree that has an X, a Y, and a color, it's going to head and say, that's a pixel. Here you go, and you can use it. So this is really cool because what it allows you to do is it allows you to interact with data on the fly while it's still coming into your application. Say, for example, you're working in an object-oriented model. So we're getting all of these pixels coming in, and we can't work with them right away. We need to instantiate them into pixel objects. What we can do, what you would normally have to do, is you would have to make a request, get all of those pixels back from the server, and then you would have to iterate through all of the pixels calling the pixel constructor for every single one of those. With Obo, what we can do instead is we can match all of those pixels as they're coming out, and then we're just going to return an object where we're going to instantiate the pixel. So we'll instantiate the pixel with a pixel.x, pixel.y, and color. I'll make this a little smaller so you guys can see. Boop. So now, by the time Obo finishes, the data that it finishes with, which we can go ahead and inspect by calling this other function, the done function, the data inside of here is going to be our already it's going to be the JSON response that we've parsed out. But instead of having this array of pixels inside of there, we're going to have an array of already instantiated pixels that we can go ahead and just interact with as if they were objects. Another great way to use Obo is as a filtering library. So say we have all of these pixels coming in, and we don't actually care about all of them. Say we only really care about the blue pixels. What we can do is we can scope a property outside of our Obo listeners. Let's call this just blue pixels, and that's going to be an array. And then as we're going through and parsing all of these pixels, we can go ahead and say, if the pixel has a color and that color is equal to blue, then we want to go ahead and actually use it. So we'll just push it into our pixels array. And now, by the time we've reached the done function, our blue pixels array is going to contain only the blue pixels that we actually care about. This touches on another really cool aspect of Obo, which is its memory management. So your concern in this situation could be that, okay, I see what you're doing. You're pulling in this data and you're saving these blue pixels, but you're duplicating the data because you told me that by the time that we get to the done function, we have this other object, which is all of the response that we've parsed. What Obo lets you do is that you can use this other function called this.drop inside of your listeners. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell Obo to just completely forget about the part of the tree that it has just parsed. So we can tell it, hey, if you go ahead and find this pixel and it isn't blue, then I want you to go ahead and forget about what you pulled in. So if it isn't blue, I want you to return this.drop. And if it is blue, cool, just keep going. And now by the time that we get to the end of our data, when we get to our done function, our data is going to have a pixels array, but that pixels array is going to only include our blue pixels. The other ones will just have been dropped out of memory as soon as they were parsed. Another really cool thing about using this event-driven approach to data transfer is that it automatically gives you this really graceful way to deal with lost connections. So if you have an application where, say, we have a map and we're trying to render points on a map, like say you're looking for restaurants. So in a normal JSON request, if we're loading all of these restaurants and when we've gotten 50% of the data, we lose connection, what would happen is that you just wouldn't get the rest of the response would fail, and you'd have to display a message to the user saying, sorry, we lost connection, try again. What doing this with Obo lets you do instead is that as that 50% comes into your application, you can take it and you can put it into the application, render it to the user. That means that when you lose connection, the user simply won't get any new restaurants coming in, but they already have 50% of those restaurants already plotted on the map. All right, so Obo sounds really great on the client side, but what does it take on the server side to enable it to work all this magic? The good news is it doesn't really take a whole lot. All it takes is that you have to be able to respond from the server to the client in a stream. In Node.js, that's fortunately a really, really easy thing. because responses are already writable streams. So that means that you can just get your data as a stream, and then you can take that stream and pipe it into the response. And then, boom, it's already a spawn. Now it's a stream when it makes it to the client. All right, so let's say that that sounds a little too complicated. You don't really want to do that. Or more likely, maybe you're not working in Node, or you're working in a platform that doesn't give you streaming capabilities, or maybe you're not even in control of that platform, so you don't get to make that choice. Well, the good news is you can actually view any JSON response as a stream, because the response doesn't arrive at the client all in one time. Instead, it arrives in packets over time and eventually gets all compiled when that response finishes. So that means that you can get the benefits of using Obo when you apply it to any REST endpoint, which is fantastic. The environment that I find myself using Obo in the most is actually in the shell. So in a Unix shell, the paradigm of how you write commands is that all commands communicate through two streams, standard in and standard out. Every command executes, and then it takes its result and it writes it to its standard in, or its standard out. Then all other commands have the ability to execute by reading standard in into their command, using that, getting data from it, and then writing that back out again. So if I can execute this command, which is with the AWS CLI, and I just wanted to list a bunch of pipelines for me. Those pipelines are then going to get written to that command's standard out, which means that then I can connect it to another command with this pipe operator, and then that next command is going to receive the standard out from the previous command as its own standard in, and then it can go ahead and keep working with that data. In Node, this is really easy to work with because Node has direct access to standard in and standard out through the process environment variable. You can just go ahead and call process.standardin, process.standardout, and you can directly go ahead and work with them. The thing though is that this requires a little bit of work still. So if I was going to go ahead and get all of these pipelines into my Node script, and then I wanted to, say, rerun those pipelines, I would have to first refer to my process.standardin, and then I would have to attach an event listener to it for when it ends. So I would say on end, call this function. And in that function, the result of standard in when it finishes isn't actually going to be the data I want. Instead, it's going to be a string that I have to JSON parse into the data I want. So I'd have to say var, my JSON is equal to JSON.parse the data that came in. And then I would have to go into that JSON, and I would have to say, hey, JSON, you have all of these pipelines, and I want you to go ahead and iterate through them. And for each of them, I want you to rerun the pipeline. With Obo, you can go ahead and do all of this in a much simpler way. We can just wrap this standard in with the Obo function, because Obo takes in any readable stream. And then instead of calling a listener on end, we'll just switch this to Node, and we'll tell this that this is going to happen for all of the pipelines. So that means that now instead of the data, what we're going to get is we're going to get a pipeline. And this pipeline, when we fire our event listener, is already JSON parsed. So we don't have to do anything like this in it. Instead, we can just go ahead and in here directly call our rerun pipeline function with the pipeline. So we cut out one line and we simplify a whole lot of code, and we cut out an error where we cut out a line of JSON parsing where we could be throwing an error. So this is fantastic. Now, no one's going to be happy if I come and tell you all of these great things and don't actually show you any code. So let's go ahead and dig into an application that I wrote to show you guys this. I came up with this idea watching a talk by Jen Schiffer at a JSConf, where she demoed this application that she wrote called Make 8-Bit Art. And Make 8-Bit Art is really cool. What it does is it's this web application where you can just go ahead and draw stuff. What's really cool about it is that once you've drawn something, you can actually go ahead and export it to this JSON format. So no technical talk is complete, I feel, unless you have something having to do with a cat in it. So I went ahead and made this picture to show you guys. And then I exported that into some JSON text, which I can go ahead and show you. Every single one of these, so the JSON that exports has this pixels inside of it, which is what we're ultimately going to end up working with. However, I wanted to have a bigger and bigger file just to demonstrate how this would work. So I went ahead and added these just like 40 useless properties onto every single one of these pixels just to bog the response down. So now our application is just a simple node server, which is going to give us two basic routes. When we go to home, it's basically as soon as possible, just going to give us a static HTML page, which has a grid on it of pixels and nothing else. Then we have this other REST endpoint, which when we call /data is going to read a file from the file system, which is going to be those points that I just showed you. It's going to get that as a readable stream, and then it's going to pipe that into the response. Then on the client side, we basically just have a page, some stylings that are going to make our grid. But the key thing that we're having here is we're having all of these classes that are going to allow us to add a color to a div. So then on the client side, we have some helper functions that are just going to let us, given an X position and a Y position, they're just going to help us find what position in the grid that is. And then where the magic happens is that we're going to have oboe, which makes a request to that REST endpoint that gets us those pixels. And then it's going to look for any pixel. It's going to find the part in the grid that maps to that pixel. And then once it finds it, it's just going to add the color that it finds. It's going to add that CSS class to it to color it. So that's this application here. And if I show it to you, boom, you see this cat just loads really quickly. All right, that's not that cool. But if we go ahead and turn on the DevTools emulator, and we're going to emulate a much slower connection. We're going to go ahead and tell it, hey, I want you to pretend that what I'm working on right here is actually a 2G connection, a good 2G, we'll give it that. Now when we go ahead and make the same request, which isn't even loading in that much data, the pixels that we're loading in are about 700K, which isn't big, but it's definitely far more than you ever want to be transferring on a connection, especially a connection of this speed. And now when we reload the same page, you'll see that with no extra work, what we get is really slowly that same cat, and it just loads slowly over time until we have all of the pixels loaded into our application. Thank you. See, people love cats. Always gets a clap. So oboe is great because it gives you all of these UX experiences. But on the client side, or as a developer, what do I have to leverage? How difficult is it for me to add oboe in? So we've already seen that the API is extremely difficult. I would say that you can read the docs and be up and running with it in less than 15, 20 minutes. The other great thing is that by adding oboe into your application, you're adding almost nothing in. The whole size of the oboe library, minified and gzipped, is about 5K, which, to put it into perspective, is a sixth of the size of jQuery. It also has no real external dependencies. It has one, which is that it needs ES5 features in order to work. So that means that if you're trying to support an older browser, you might have to add a shim in order to get those. But aside of that, there's nothing. The only other dependency is the library that it leverages to do with the SAX parsing. And they've actually gone ahead and included that dependency in the oboe library and slimmed it down to the absolute essentials so that you get everything you need already. Now, you wouldn't believe me if I told you that oboe was fantastic and there are absolutely no downsides, so let's go ahead and talk about those as well. So when would you not want to use oboe? I think that the real situation is if you have a sufficiently small data transfer. In that situation, you're not really going to see much of an improvement by using oboe than you would over just doing either a native XML HTTP request or doing an AJAX request. So in that case, the overhead of adding this new library and getting your developers acquainted with it might just be more than you want to deal with. The other thing is that you are adding extra JavaScript functions that have to be evaluated. So you're adding extra time that needs to be clocked into the extra CPU time that needs to be processed. The thing with both of those is that JavaScript engines are fast and they're only getting faster over time. So I think that Obo is already a very viable option for the majority of data transfers, and it's only going to get better as time goes on. I hope you guys got very excited about Obo. I know I did as I started learning about it. I've gone ahead and listed just a few other resources that you guys could take a look at. There's the Obo docs, which are fantastic. They have all of these great animations to explain all the advantages and the great concepts of Obo. Also, Obo.js on GitHub. If there's anything that you're going through and are confused about, you can go ahead and file an issue there. I'm pretty active on them. I've commented on almost all. I'll definitely see whatever you post up there and try to respond to you. You can also just go ahead and look at this presentation again, or you can reach out to me with questions. And I write for the Fluencia engineering blog. So if this sounds interesting and you want to find out more about what we're doing at Fluencia, just go take a peek at that. Thank you guys very much for having me. Move on to the next guy? Or do you want to do questions? Yeah.
What happens in the case of syntax errors?
So what happens in the case of syntax error is that you can attach, I assume you mean inside of the JSON that's getting passed to Obo. Right. You can actually go ahead and attach another function to Obo, which is .error. And there you'll have the function fire with just a string of what was being parsed in and what the error was. So you can do your handling in there. Another question, I think we have a question right here. Yeah.
Yeah, so you said it's an overkill for small data sets. Like, what is the, from your experience, what's the cutoff there?
I think it's very flexible because it has a lot to do with what network and what devices you're supporting. I mean, if you're only ever going to support desktop apps on a fast connection, then you'll probably need to get into like megabytes of transfer before you see that bonus. But if you're dealing with web applications that are going to be on old mobile phones, you might even see that benefit in data as small as like 50K, 10K. So I think it's a spectrum where you more would have to drop it in, test it, and see what your users are going to respond to, what's worth it for you.
Did you write this library?
I did not. I wish. Whew. Yeah.
If you have to support, if your request has to support something other than a URL, like an HTTP header or like a data post, is that capability?
Yeah, I only showed you the example with a URL, but instead of passing it a URL, where you can pass it in as a configuration object, which has a property for a URL, but then also properties for custom headers, for other specifications. So you can add anything you need in there. Lots of details in the docs with it. Yeah.
Why is it called Obo?
Clarinet was already a library, so they just played off of there. Clarinet is the Sax-based parser that it built on. Awesome. Thank you guys very much. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about, you were talking about process test standard in. Do you know of any place that someone could learn about process test standard in?
Yeah, I've heard somewhere that there's a node school tutorial that goes through streams.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some people, maybe here in Baltimore, they're doing something maybe soon on Saturday.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. Check it out.
Oh, that's.
Is this a joint talk?
No, it's just my laptop.
Okay. Well, is Eric, he's going to talk about this. Is this a game?
Yes.
Okay. Well, he's going to talk about that.
How do I mute it?
I think you can.
There's a mute button on the top right of the keyboard.
Okay. So I'm talking about a game that I made for the Ludum Dare game creation competition, which is you have to create a game in 48 hours. It needs to be completely solo. So you have to create all code, graphics, music, all entirely by yourself in 48 hours. And I did have to look up, it's correctly pronounced Ludum Dare. I wanted to make sure I didn't sound silly giving a speech. So, and it happens 3 times per year. And I've done it a couple times now. And this is the first time that I made a game. This is what it was. And it was horrible. You couldn't even finish the game because I didn't actually get around to making an ending, but I still was happy that I completed something. All right, so the point is, if you're trying to create a game in 48 hours, a lot of the challenge is going to be psychological in your head, just trying to get it done in 48 hours, trying to work on it. The technical aspect is not that difficult. So that was my first game. The second game, I'm like, all right, I learned a little bit from creating the first game. So I made this much better. It actually has an ending, and it featured an alternate universe where everyone is Dr. Dre. And so a little bit about me first before I talk about the game that I'm going to show off here. Self-taught programmer. I am okay at doing graphics and music, mostly just program. And I had the free time and the motivation to create a game. And also, I'm looking for a job. If anyone really likes what they see, feel free to talk to me. The library that I used to create this is a library called Impact.js. It's designed for creation of games using HTML5. And the reason I wanted to, I'll say first, I wanted to use JavaScript because the game competition allows you to use any platform. I could have made a Windows executable, but if I'm doing something web-based, that's going to be a lot easier for people to experience it. That way they don't have to download the executable, run it. Just a lot easier to get people to play it. So I use this Impact.js, and it handles all the game physics, collision detection, animation. It has a built-in level editor. Other tools, Schism Tracker to create the music. ProMotion is what I use to create the graphics. And there's an interesting tool called SFXer, which is something that someone created specifically to create sound effects for this game competition, because one of the rules is that everything that you put in the game has to be created in those 48 hours. So you have to make sound effects. So someone created the tool that easily creates sound effects just for making games for this competition. Oh, and speaking of the psychological aspect, I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro technique, which is work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break. Does anybody here, I'm curious, anybody use it? You do? Oh, a lot of people. Okay, that's interesting. So I can show you the game now, and I don't know if maybe we have a volunteer who would like to play the game. If they're feeling adventurous, just to show it off. All right, you want to try it? You were playing it before. Okay. All right. It's kind of hard. You don't have to, if you can't complete it, it's fine. Maybe people will get bored watching you try to play through the entire thing.
So quick key.
It's press enter to
up, down, and space for jump in or something like that?
Yeah, it says right in there on the bottom.
Oh. 2 jumps.
Z.
Oh, Z.
It's a Z.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I think I know what to do now. Try all this. No.
That's even harder.
Okay.
I feel like
I know how to do this. I know how to do this.
Okay. Okay.
Seriously. Okay, one more time. One more time.
It's addictive, huh?
It is. It is. I love it. Oh, that was so close.
Can I just jump over the whole thing, or no?
If you tilt
I
the
have to.
laptop
I have to jump in the middle once, right? Okay. Okay. 1, 2.
Cursing enough, that's probably the problem.
It's like Flappy Bird. Oh man! Okay, one last time.
Is this the whole game?
I think this is all of the game that a lot of people ended up seeing. So we'll see if I can try it. Maybe.
It's a good way to hide it's not finished.
You just didn't try hard enough. All right. All right. I don't need to show off the whole thing. You guys get the point. And if you're curious, you can play it online. What is on the? I'll figure it out. And thank you to Max for allowing me to use his laptop for this demonstration. Does anybody have any questions? What's up?
Well, is that snake eating its own head or tail?
What is it?
Isn't the icon for that the snake that's eating its own tail?
I don't.
Is it different here? Right. No, all right. So I know a person who was into this stuff, and I thought that this was the like it had to be themed, and you were apparently saying it's not. Just, you had to create a game.
Yeah, there was a theme. The theme was you are the monster, but I'm not sure how well I achieved the theme. He turns into a cyborg over the course of the game. That's the most.
Each classroom has a different speed.
Spoiler alert.
That's here, each class.
Do you design the game before you actually get into the competition, or do you actually design it during those 48 hours?
It's supposed to be designed during the 48 hours. Because they give you the theme and you have to somehow design it around the theme and create it entirely during the 48 hours. I did use the library and some pre-existing code for the platforming stuff, but aside from that, I made it during the 48 hours. What else?
That is not JavaScript, but you mentioned the Pomodoro techniques, and really popular on Hacker News, and I love those ideas, but I never know how they pan out. So you actually like it?
Yeah.
And what can you say anything else about it in terms of how it helps you stay productive?
I think for me, I tend to get stressed out if I try to work too hard. So like when you're trying to get work done, you tend to think, yeah, I got to work hard. But I think you will tend to get more work done if you relax a little bit, try to take more frequent breaks, try to not work so hard. So that's why Pomodoro technique, I think, has been helpful for me.
Yeah, studies have shown that taking breaks increases, the powers, your mental abilities, and concentration, things like that. It increases that stuff. So.
Questions?
Sleep and caffeine, how much?
I didn't use any caffeine, and I tried to get 8 hours of sleep each night, so I guess I did all right.
That's better than a joint ring.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I have a question about like the animation, like the pixel art. How many of these blocks did you actually draw this block?
There's a couple different blocks, and they're randomly placed. Is that your question?
Like, no, my question is, did you actually draw that? Like,
Yes.
Using what?
The tool that I used was Cosmigo ProMotion.
Oh, okay, so there is a tool.
Yes. And it has a thing for drawing tiles so that they match up on the sides. I'm not sure the name.
In the relative competition to this, you're saying you can develop a game in any platform environment. Right?
Yes.
So how are they judged? I mean, they're not judging within categories, they're judging overall. And are you like trying to win within a category or overall, or you're just trying to challenge yourself in doing this?
There's no categories. There's something like 3,000 people who enter, so nobody rates all the games. You'll go and rate however many games that you end up playing, and you give them a score, and then whoever gets the highest score will be the winner.
Having a easier to access platform helps.
Right. Which
Have
is
something that's like, it only works in this
old Linux distribution. That's, you get one vote, you can't win. Right.
So like, how many lines of code is this game? Like, would you say like because you're using these other tools for like the animations and stuff, and then it all comes together with Impact.js, you said?
Yeah, Impact does most of the hard stuff. I'm not sure how many. I mean, maybe a few thousand lines. I don't know. I couldn't tell you offhand.
So aside from the game itself, what did you walk away from this with? Learn anything? Discover anything?
Learning, the satisfaction that I completed something. I'm hoping some people enjoyed playing it. Probably.
I did.
You did. Thank you. Thank you.
He's going home until it ends. Until he beats it.
All right. Was that all the questions? Okay.
Is this available after the challenge or competition?
Yeah, he asked me to put the link on the. You can show me how to do it later. Yeah, you can do view source if you're curious. I didn't post it anywhere specifically. All right, is that a hand raised? Okay, just scratching your head. Okay. So that's that. Thank you for listening to my speech. Thank you.
So next up is Ryan, and he's got some dashboards that he made in Meteor.js that he's going to show off for us.
Yeah, React's in the title, but it's about a 5-second snippet, so it's okay.
All right. Well, at least we can check that box.
Exactly. It
Did
was-
they force you to put that in?
No, actually, so the last, I was going to use, well, I'll tell you in a second.
Little diary.
We'll get to
Blink twice if they threaten you.
I don't know what that was. I love data. I'm not originally a front-end developer. I was a scientist and then a data scientist, and turned out when they hired me for a data scientist, what they really needed was a front-end developer. So I learned Ruby and I learned JS, and I was like, well, why am I learning 2 languages? This is silly. And I found Meteor, which was awesome. Meteor is an isomorphic framework built on top of Node that's meant to simplify functional reactive programming. So it's supposed to be event-driven, which is the reactive part, and functional in that you're making function calls that are supposed to return the same thing given the same inputs. So you have, all right, so that's the kind of, I'll get more into the framework, but I just want to give a quick overview of why I got excited about that and how I then applied it to what I was coming from. So here's more. Oh, it's not visible at all. This is like the best slide. All right, well, if you squint really hard, you can see this bright line here. So every line, this is actually like a line. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. That looks much better. So each line is a different country, and the y-axis is the change in its growth for that year in percent. The units really almost don't matter. Each line also is at not full opacity. So where they stack on, and they're randomly colored. So where they stack on top of each other, you get that bright line. What I love about this graph is like there's an obvious pattern to it. You see all the countries moving together. You see, you know, you could probably imagine there are some that are like on the bottom side of that bright line and some that are at the top. And you could say they're like leading and following the pack. And, you know, I did this because I was looking for patterns to try to get into some modeling and stuff like that. And yeah, I was really excited when I saw this. And actually I made a model after this and it worked like way better than I thought. So that was great. This is maybe something a little more, this one should show up.
Nope.
Damn it, okay.
One dark, guys.
All right, yeah, it's good. Look at this great. This is a graph of arrests in Baltimore from the Baltimore Public Data site. The red text there, and there's a line next to it, is when Freddie Gray was arrested, and the green line and text is when he died. And you can see the big drop off afterwards because they, you know, speculate as you will. And there's a, yeah, so there's that.
Is that a linear scale or log? It's linear, right?
This one's linear.
Okay, so not a huge difference, but definitely there.
No, and I'm curious to know why there's that big drop before that one too. So it's not, you know, something changed. I think we all know that, we were here, but it's hard to tell what. And I think the data lets us kind of look into that. So I was looking for a way to look at data quickly, and I was trying to apply these front end skills I had picked up to let me do that as quickly as possible without coding. Coding as little as possible. So I tried to think about what I was doing over and over again and come up with abstractions to let me just specify what I want and get the graphs I want, and that's it. Those graphs were not from, sorry, they're not, the dashboard I'm gonna show you is much more boring than that. But pretty much, these are the big categories. So you have like management, so you're gonna have a bunch of different graphs. You need to like have them relative to each other. You're gonna have that specifying the other abstraction. So you have collection, you gotta get the data, you gotta turn it into something that makes sense to the rest of your system, because you don't wanna have to have your graphs thinking about what the data looks like. You want the data to look the same every time it gets to the graph. So that's the formatting. You're probably not gonna wanna use the same signals that you're collecting. So that's gonna be metrics and things like that. And you're gonna have visualization, things like line charts, bar charts, network graphs, and maps. Metrics is really exciting. Yeah, I like metrics are where like you think about something and you think about what you want to see and you think about what that means in a way that you can write in code. So that's most of what coding is that kind of process. So there's current solutions. People here are probably more familiar with Graphite and StatsD, great for looking at log data, great for looking at your CPU, things like that. It's not so awesome at like, here I have this CSV of data with an arbitrary x-axis and I want to just throw it at it and look at it. There's probably ways of doing it. I've not found good ones. Also, it's kind of ugly. Grafana is a much better replacement for it, and I use that for some stuff, but it's not, it's great because it's like pre-built and it's great for DevOps teams. But I can code enough that I want something that I understand really well and I can extend when I want to. So Tableau is a one step above the DevOps teams. You got the business people, and they want to look at their metrics, and they have people set up these dashboards, and it's great because it collects from a whole bunch of data sources. It is costs money and it's closed, so that makes it hard to extend. And they kind of look like cartoons. Like, it just makes me look like how can I take that seriously? So the correct solution depends on what meetup you're at, but we're at a JavaScript meetup. So I put Meteor on top because it's awesome. Just gonna keep saying that over and over again because it's true. I didn't mean to bury React. React is awesome too. And these are pretty much the core of what's happening here. So I was gonna make a bunch of React D3 components and try to do that myself. And then the last meetup I was here, I forget his name, but he mentioned React D3, and I was like, this is great. This is the whole point of React is you get clean encapsulated abstractions, and you can reuse them. So that's what I did. So I did not write any D3 for this presentation, and the only React I wrote was instantiating a component and adding it to the DOM. I hope the title wasn't misleading. I like, Meteor is awesome, okay? So this is how the different tools fit into that chart I showed you before. _JS comes with Meteor, so I didn't mention it, and it's awesome. It's kind of the functional aspect of Meteor. You get your maps, reduces filters, things like that. So that's really the easiest way to kind of parse through data and do formatting and metrics. And yeah, this should be pretty self-explanatory. Well, I didn't actually use them. I wanted to include them because I talked about network graphs and maps. And those are the two ways you would do that. I've used Leaflet in the past. Super slick, super clean. If you're ever going to do maps, use Leaflet. Sigma is similar for network graphs.
Yeah, so Leaflet, you mean like GIS maps? Or?
Yeah, sorry. Exactly. So this is really, it's a Meteor quick look, but it's really just at the data aspects of Meteor. So just because I'm going to show you some code in a little bit. Like I said, my goal was actually to write as little code as possible. So that means there's some things that are obfuscated, and I want you to understand what's going on behind the scenes. So with data, it's Meteor uses MongoDB because it syncs that data. So you throw JSON into collections in Mongo. It's a NoSQL database. You have something called mini Mongo running in memory on the client. That emulates most of the functionality of Mongo, and use pub sub. So you subscribe to collections from Mongo on the client. That data gets synced across. It takes your data out of your templating, and you don't think about it. It's great. I should also say that Meteor, one of their mantras is batteries included but removable. Whatever you want to use, you can use it. You want to use SQL, you load the node module and you use SQL. You don't get the reactive stuff because you don't have SQL running in the client, although people have worked on using SQLite and things like that. I'm not going to get into that because I don't even know where that stands these days. The other part of that is remote methods calls, which are like in other frameworks. So you just call a method on the client in a certain way, and that method gets run on the server. Oh, and then that's the future, but first we should go to the actual code. So pretty much I'm going to show you two dashboards. Here's one. This is just that React D3 component here. And these are some stocks. The data is coming from a service called Quandle, which you can just hit with an HTTP request, pull in some data, and it works. So that's good. And I'm going to show you the other one. I'm going to show you these two, and then I'll show you the code that actually is required to write this, because I mean, it is simple. It's not too crazy, but the idea is that I want to do this all the time, every day, and I want to take about 5 minutes to make a new one. So that's really the goal. So this is git commits for different repos in the last 10 days. So in Meteor, oh, I didn't mention this. All the rendering happens in the browser, just so, React style. So there's not HTTP requests flying around. It's just renders the part of the DOM it needs to do what it does. So I wrote a package for Meteor called Dashboarder. It takes this is a CoffeeScript. It takes a giant hash map, nested, and uses Bootstrap to make some navigation. So like all of this is done, with this hash map. I mean, the package has more code, but if I want to make a new thing that looks like this with navigation, I just write a new hash map and it's done. So that's, all of this. These are actually only one level, but it could be nested. And then I'm going to jump over to the actual code for the git check one. So on the startup, it's going to remove all the data from the Mongo collection. And for each repo, in a variable called repos, which is right here, just list literally the names of the repos. It's going to call a method called getRepoData. Here's that whole function. It's making an HTTP call using underscore to do some kind of data munging, bunch of maps, a reduce and a sort by, and then it inserts that data into Mongo. On the client, pretend that these two that I have selected don't exist because they shouldn't. They should be in the package. They're the same for every single dashboard. I ran into an issue sort of like nesting a package in another package that had D3. I mean, it had React, and it loses access to React DOM. I found that it was a known issue before I could really deal with that. But so for now, I'm just copying these two files in. So I'm going to pretend those don't exist. So this is on the client. So you have that page tree being created to show this is just generating that hash map. So that's another 4 lines. Again, using that repos variable. And the index is the title and the call to the library. And that's all the code it takes to make a dashboard. It's like 25 lines, somewhere around there. Maybe more than that, because that method call was probably, oh, that's 20 lines. Okay, like 30 lines. But yeah, so I mean, this is really the part that has to get customized for different data, because your data is going to come in different formats, and you have to turn it into something that can be read by the React component. But you know, really, there's also only so many ways the data can come in. You can have records, you can have columnar data, you can have different data types. So it should be totally possible to kind of abstract this away too. So you're just specifying, you know, pretty much what I just said. And there's a few more parameters that are in that other kind of flow diagram earlier. But that's my goal. I just want to be able to have a fully extendable dashboard. Yeah, that's really it. Let me know. You can turn the lights on, I guess. Cool. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I know working with like the native library of D3, there's some shitload of stuff you have to know. How interactive is that graph? That's just lines right now. Like annotating graphs, I felt like was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, so that was, I did use the React D3 components, and he has like a bunch of to-dos on his stuff. And I was thinking I would just, you know, it'd be nice to go back in and edit them. I don't like that his README is like essentially his resume and that he's like trying to use it to pimp himself. Although I totally understand, because I have those in my GitHub too. Because I would love to extend them. I mean, I've done some D3. I would feel comfortable doing that, especially if I knew it was going to pay off for a lot of people and including myself over time. So I think that's the way it should happen. You know, make.
How complex are those components, I guess? Because every time I see those, they're so basic that you can't use them.
So this particular one is pretty much what you saw. You can mouse over the points and they get big. There's no tooltips. I don't know if you've seen like Mike Bostock's stuff, but anytime you search for any D3 and any type of graph, you're going to get a graph by Mike Bostock, or like blocks or whatever it's called. And they're all pretty much designed for like static data, and they take like a few days to gut and make actually adaptable. I did it for an old job, and it took a week to make a heat map so that, you know, it would scale with the different text sizes and things like that. But it's doable, and using things like React that give you proper encapsulation should provide even more motivation to do that, because they're reusable. It's not just a static code.
I haven't played with D3 myself, but I know some other JavaScript libraries a couple of years ago run into really big problems as your data sets got larger. Is that a problem with D3 or?
No, so that first graph that had all the countries, so that's done actually. I don't know if I can say this. It's done in Python, and it was done with matplotlib. And there's a library called mplD3, matplotlib-D3, that takes your matplotlib code, turns it into D3, and that works. And I have an interactive version of that graph. I'm still cleaning it up because I want to put it out there. But so on that time scale, so that's like 1960 to present, it's a little slow. But that's also like, you know, 200 series times 60. So that's a decent number of points. But you have to, you know, think about how many points you can really show on the thing anyways. And that one's interactive in that you can actually like zoom in and things like that.
Definitely still something you have to think about.
Yeah, but I think your eyes can only perceive so much anyways, I guess is the point of that. Yeah.
Can I chime in and say that often the performance limitation of D3 is how many nodes you can stick in your SVG, and in that case, you might need to move the canvas and you'll lose some of the interactivity, but it can be very fast.
It's a great point.
Do you do any like heavy math underscore JS math?
Not in this one. I mean, I have in other situations, and it's great. I mean, you define kind of your heavy math function outside. I would normally do it outside of your underscore chaining, just to make the underscore chaining can get really dense and really hard to kind of unwrap. But yeah, make some nice functions prior to that chaining, and it works great. And there's also low dash. So if you do run into performance stuff, there's a more advanced version of underscore called Lodash that does like lazy evaluation and things like that. So that behaves a little better.
I have a selfish question. I noticed you were using, you said Python, right? And there's something in one of the slides that talked about pandas. Is that a library? Is that familiar?
Yeah, no, I love pandas. I didn't think I put it in there, but yes.
Yeah, so are you going to the bar?
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, pandas is awesome. Yeah, there's not a good data frame abstraction for JavaScript, actually. I haven't found one. So if anyone knows and want to tell me about that.
We have someone in our company who wrote a bunch of data stuff in IPython and pandas and a couple of the libraries, and we're trying to make sense of it. So this was the whole shit.
Oh, yeah, great. Cool. Perfect. No, that's good. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, so thanks for coming out, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to continue hanging out, we can go over to Hux, which is, as I claimed earlier, like a 3-minute walk. You basically go to the building, make a right, and then keep going until you get to Hudson, and then make a right. So hopefully I'll see you over there.